and welcome to English for You. I'm Erin.
And I'm Mike.
And we are talking about...
Did you feel that?
I didn't.
Was that an earthquake?
It was.
Was it?
I don't know.
Okay.
What should we do?
Go on. What were you saying?
Well, Mike, if you had just felt an earthquake, what is your scariest earthquake experience?
Well, that one
was pretty scary.
No, that wasn't that scary. It was very, very small. I was here many years ago after the 9/21 earthquake.
Oh.
I was not here for the earthquake, but I came back a few weeks later. And that was scary because normally earthquakes move like this, and here in Taiwan, that's kind of normal, right? We might have a little one every month or two. But this one, after the big one, the ground was going like up and down. And I've only felt that 2 or 3 times since then, but as soon as that happens, I get scared because that's just weird.
Yeah, that's where it gets really kind of scary.
You should do that when you're dancing, not when the earth is moving.
Right.
It's not normal.
I had one of those experiences pretty soon after I got to Taiwan.
Really?
Yeah, and it was actually scary because there's only been one time where I've ever had to evacuate a building.
You had to like run out for your safety?
I was in my school and in class teaching and we felt the earthquake and my kids kind of panicked.
Everyone's scared.
Yeah, the staff just said, okay, everyone go outside. And you know what?
Really?
They actually closed the school down for the day. And
I guess to make sure everything's
was
safe.
okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never had to evacuate somewhere for an earthquake. Evacuate is when you have to leave a place because of an earthquake, or maybe if there's a fire in a big building, they'd say, everyone get out of the building, evacuate.
Yes.
So that is scary.
It was scary,
because when people are telling you to run for your safety, soon you're scared.
Yeah.
All right. So yes, earthquakes is the topic of our conversation, of our dialogue and article for today. Since we live in an earthquake region, let's get to it before the next big shake happens.
Right.
Reading. An Education in Earthquakes. Danny visits the 9/21 Earthquake Museum of Taiwan. He is with the guide.
Let's start with the Cha Long Pu Fault Gallery.
Okay, what can we see here?
You will see some pictures of the 9/21 earthquake.
How big was the earthquake?
It measured 7.3 on the Richter scale.
Wow, look at these exhibitions of old classrooms. Everything is such a mess. Even the sports field was destroyed.
It was truly terrible. You could feel the power of nature. Follow me into the Earthquake Engineering Hall.
What can we learn in there?
We can learn how good engineering can save buildings in an earthquake. These days, engineers are better at building structures that can resist earthquakes.
Oh, cool! I can try my hand at building model structures.
Yes. See if you can build one that won't collapse. After that, we'll go into the Disaster Prevention Hall. In there, we can find out what to do when there's an earthquake.
Danny starts to build a model.
All right, so we are, like we said in the introduction, talking about earthquakes today. And we are meeting a character. His name is Danny.
Okay.
And let's find out what he's doing. It says, Danny visits the 9/21 Earthquake Museum of Taiwan. He is with the guide. Okay, now before we get any further into this article, let's talk about the noun earthquake. This, of course, is when the earth starts moving, either in an up and down motion or in a side-to-side motion. Now, some earthquakes are small, like Mike talked about earlier, and don't cause much damage at all, don't really scare people. They're usually kind of normal. But others can be really big and cause lots of damage. Of course, like the 9/21, there was the one in Chinese New Year a couple of years ago in Tainan, the one in Hualien a couple of years ago, right? So these ones cause a lot of damage. So, you know, they can be quite a scary situation. Here's an example. The large earthquake destroyed some buildings and started many fires.
Oh yeah, that's always a danger, right? Because sometimes the gas pipes break and fires can start. That's a whole other problem.
Right.
All right. Well, the guide, the person leading the tour through the museum, that's what we call this person, a museum guide, a tour guide, or just a guide, begins the conversation by saying, let's start with the Chalungpu Fault Gallery.
I think you got that right.
Oh, that was my best try. So this is one part of the museum. Usually museums have these large rooms. We call those rooms galleries. And well, a fault is an earthquake term. That's where the earth kind of joins. So when you see a crack in the ground after an earthquake, either in real life or on the news, that usually shows there's a fault in the Earth's crust. And often, yeah, they have names, just so scientists can know which fault or which lines they are talking about.
Exactly.
So this is a place to go and see some of the effects of the earthquake.
Okay, well, Danny is going to respond. He says, okay, what can we see here?
He wants to know what's in the gallery.
Yeah.
And so the guide explains, you will see some pictures of the 9/21 earthquake.
No, you won't see pictures of the earthquake.
No.
You'll see like the aftermath
Pictures of the damage
Yeah.
caused or faults in the ground,
Right.
you know, buildings that have been hurt or damaged or even destroyed. So Danny next has a question to understand more
That's right.
about the earthquake.
Okay, the question, how big was the earthquake? That's a nice, simple question.
That is a question. It's, of course, one of the most important bits of news you can get after you hear about an earthquake. And they measure this using a scientific number scale. The guide says it measured 7.3 on the Richter scale.
Right.
All right, that's the name. It was invented or devised or thought of by a scientist named Dr. Richter. I don't know his or her first name.
Right.
But it was a 7.3. Usually if it's around 4, we feel it. That's kind of small. Anything in the 5 or 6 range is scary, and anything up to 7 or above is dangerous.
Yes.
All right. This is how scientists measure the power of the shaking of the earthquake. Now, to measure, this verb is basically to see how big something is or how small something is, to put a number on something. We measure temperature by using degrees Celsius. If you're driving in a car, on a scooter, there's that speedometer that measures how fast you're going. And if you're measuring length or width or height, you can get a tape measure or a ruler, and you can see in centimeters or inches or feet or meters how tall, long, or wide something is. There's many numbers, many things we want to know, and to get those numbers, to get that data, we need to measure things. For example, the apartment measures 17 square meters. So that's the area on the floor that this apartment makes up.
All right, well, that's a big...
7.3.
7.3?
That's big.
That's a big earthquake?
Yeah. I think between 6 and 7, that's like 1,000 more.
Right.
Right? It's a bit of a different scale, so it gets really big as you get to the high numbers.
Exactly. Okay, so Danny is in the gallery, in the
Chepenglu Fault Gallery.
Yep, and he's saying, wow, look at these exhibitions of old classrooms. Everything is such a mess. So, you know, he's kind of looking around and maybe they have like what a classroom looked like after the earthquake, and he's kind of going, oh, wow, like this is crazy.
That's right. Some of those classrooms and schools in the hills outside Nantou, I remember, were very badly damaged. And I think they've left some of them that way. They're too dangerous. They've built a new school in another place, but they left it there for people to see.
Right.
And so Danny's looking at this display, looking at the photographs, and he notices something quite amazing. He says even the sports field was destroyed. Now, often when we think of earthquakes destroying or damaging things, we're thinking of buildings. They're tall, they're strong, but when the earth shakes, they can crack and break and fall apart.
Right.
Well, this earthquake, the 9/21, was so strong that even a field, a flat piece of the land, was destroyed. It takes a lot of power to destroy a big field. And yeah, a field is basically just a large grassy area of land. Farmers, of course, will have fields. Cows eat the grass in the field, or horses run around in the farmer's field. Here, though, we're talking about a sports field. This is the type of place you would play soccer, you would play baseball, football, things like that. It's not inside, so it's not where you might play basketball or badminton. That would be a gym or an arena or something like that. When we think of field, we think of an open area, and usually the ground is grass, which is what people will play sports on. So it's a noun, of course, and we would say the players ran out onto the field to play a sport.
Yeah, soccer probably.
Possibly, yeah.
All right, well, the guide says it was truly terrible. You could feel the power of nature.
Yeah.
Now, of course, nature is not a human, but we often give it kind of human qualities.
True.
And power and strength is a big one. Now, when you think about nature, you might think about big storms and earthquakes and these things that happen. And
volcanoes.
yeah, how they're very strong and they create a lot of energy and stuff. So that's why we say the power of nature. This earthquake was really strong. It had a lot of power.
It's true. We build these buildings, but nature can come along and just knock them down as easy as anything. Anyways, back to the article. The guide wants to continue on with the tour. So the guide next says, follow me into the earthquake engineering hall. So you can maybe imagine the guide kind of saying, all right, walk this way. We must move on to the next gallery or hall. Hall is just another word for a big open room, like a gallery, maybe.
All right, so Danny has seen all the exhibitions in that first room, and now he's moving into the next one, and he asks, what can we learn in there?
Oh, okay, yeah. In different rooms and museums, you'll learn different topics, different subjects, different information. So the guide explains what the next room has. We can learn how good engineering can save buildings in an earthquake.
Right.
Ah, okay. So we're moving away a little bit from the story of the 9/21 earthquake to just earthquakes in general around the world. And one of the things that people can do to sort of fight against the earthquake or try to not be too badly hurt is to have good engineering. Now, what is engineering? This is a noun that basically means a meeting of science and construction, right? When people build things, when they make things, they use science to get the idea, but then you have to take that idea from the classroom, from a book, and turn it into something real, a machine, a bridge, something like that in the real world. There's many types of engineering. Here we would probably be talking about structural engineering. That's
people who build buildings.
That's right. Structural, S-T-R-U-C-T-U-R-A-L. Basically a structure, we'll see that word is a building. So this is the science of building strong and safe buildings, bridges, tunnels, all sorts of things like that.
Okay, well, we're going to learn more about that in a second because here the guide continues to say, these days, engineers are better at building structures that can resist earthquakes. All right, so we are going to talk about a couple of the words that we saw, or we just heard Mike talk about a little bit. And the first one is engineer. Now, a person who designs and builds things is called the engineer. So an engineer works in engineering. That's the noun form we just talked about. So someone who designs and builds computers, for example, could be called a computer engineer. Now, engineers can build and design light systems or other things that work with electricity. They would call them electrical engineers. And engineers also build and design buildings, bridges, and lots of other different types of machines. Now, like Mike said, a structural engineer is going to be that person who builds and designs big structures like buildings and bridges. Here's an example. A small team of engineers built an electric airplane.
Ooh, an electric airplane. That would be cool. Not so much pollution. But let's not talk about that type of engineer who builds machines. Let's talk about the ones who build buildings or structures. Of course, earthquakes are really focused on making structures safe because structure is a noun and it basically means a building. It can be a really big structure like Taipei 101 or a very simple structure like a little hut made of wood and leaves on a beach somewhere. Something you can make with almost anything, but it usually has walls, a roof, a door, some windows, something like that. So structures are everything from schools to hospitals to little homes to big office buildings, and everything else you can imagine that is a building, basically. For example, many structures in Japan are still made of wood.
True.
Yeah. It's good for earthquakes, right? It bends a little bit more.
All right, so we said in that sentence that these days, engineers are building structures a lot stronger, a lot better for earthquakes than they used to be in the past. And what we said was that they are building structures to resist earthquakes. Now, resist is a verb, and here it means to not be affected or damaged by something, usually something bad. Now, buildings that resist earthquakes are built so strongly that earthquakes can't damage them or won't damage them a lot, I guess, won't knock them over completely. Now, you can try to resist other things. You can try to resist a cold.
Oh, yeah.
Now, to do that, you might drink lots of hot tea and eat lots of ginger, and you'll put lemons in your water. You might even try to resist a sneeze. Now, that's when you do basically anything you can not to sneeze. So you're basically just trying to have something bad not happen. All right, here's another example. This thick coat should be able to resist the winter cold.
Okay, so it'll fight against it, it'll protect you from it.
Right.
Usually something bad, right? That's what we're resisting, something not so good. Anyway, so Danny is looking at some of these structures and some of the things that explain engineering. And he says, oh, cool. And then he notices something. I can try my hand at building model structures. So that's fun. These museums where you can play with stuff and do stuff.
Those are the best kinds.
Are always really interesting. So he's going to try his hand at building a model structure. And while he does that, we're going to go to our pocket phrase go and try our hand at explaining try our hand.
Yes.
Pocket phrase go!
A whole new world, a dazzling place I never knew. But when I'm way up here, it's crystal clear that now I'm in a whole new world with you. 大家好，刚刚有没有跟着我一起唱呢？没错，我就是充满了智慧又美貌的 Jasmine 茉莉小公主啦。最近啊，我认识一个超帅的男生哦，他叫做 Aladdin 哦。不过呢，他可不知道我是个可爱迷人、美丽的小公主这样的身份，所以我决定了，我为了不让他发现，我要假装我是公主身边的一个小丫鬟。但是你们也知道，我气质是那么的高贵，而且怎么办？我是个生活小白痴。Oh my god， 我好怕我装不来耶。不过为了我心爱的人，我可是什么都愿意做，愿意尝试。因此呢，我决定了 I decided to try my hand at cooking。没错，因为啊，如果我连煮饭都不会，可能会被 Aladdin 一眼识破我娇贵小公主的身份。所以贴身丫鬟的生活琐碎事、家事啦，我样样都要学会耶。I have to try my hand at doing house chores like doing the laundry, sewing, and even cleaning the house. Basically, all the things I have never done before. 不好意思哦，我是不是讲太难太多的英文？你们是不是会听不懂呢？刚刚我有提到的片语 try one's hand at something 就是初次尝试做什么哦。那因为对我而言 cooking 煮饭 doing the laundry 洗衣服还有 sewing 缝纫以及 cleaning the house 打扫房间都是我通通没做过的，所以我就可以搭配 try one's hand at然后后面接第一次尝试做的事情，通常是某个技能啦，或者是想新学的知识或是领域等等。好了，为了真爱，我什么都愿意。I'm willing to try my hand at anything. It's all for love. Love you, Aladdin.
All right, so Danny's excited. He's going to try his hand at building models of structures. So he might use some clay or some concrete.
Bricks.
Well, I suppose he won't use concrete, but bricks or wood to try to build his own buildings.
Lego?
Yeah, maybe. All right, well, the guide says, yes, see if you can build one that won't collapse. Okay.
What if we built everything out of Lego? Anyways, I'll think about that another time.
Yeah.
But let's talk about collapse,
Yeah,
because
right.
that's what you don't want your structure to do.
Exactly. When something like a bridge or a building collapses, it falls apart and crashes to the ground. Now, it would usually do this because it was damaged in some way, because something, like an earthquake shook it, or maybe if a building wasn't built very well, like maybe if it had paint cans inside the wall.
Right, or if it's very old.
Right.
Old buildings might collapse too.
Exactly. So the guide is telling Danny, maybe we'll give it the earthquake test, your model. So try to build one that isn't going to collapse or fall apart.
Interesting. So they're going to do that, but then the guide tells what's going to happen next. It says, after that, we'll go into the disaster prevention hall. In there, we can find out what to do when there's an earthquake.
Good.
So this is good for young people or maybe visitors to Taiwan. I know in other parts of the world they don't have a lot of earthquakes, so this will sort of teach you about earthquake survival and safety. So
How to stay safe.
before they do that, Danny still has some work to do though, right?
That's right. We are going to finish off today's article with one last scenario. It says, Danny starts to build a model.
Okay.
I wonder what he'll learn.
I don't know. We have a budding engineer there.
Yeah.
And so that's it for today, but we do have our chat question. So please do come back for that in just a moment.
All right.
For you chat.
All right, since we're visiting museums in our article for this month, we decided to chat about museums.
Right.
Many types of museums, not just earthquake ones. So here's the question. What is something useful you've learned from a museum? Any museum?
Okay, well, I guess I can't think of a specific fact at the moment, but I can say that I've been really interested in certain exhibitions. For example, a few months ago, I think in maybe late 2018 or early 2019, I think the British Museum actually had a small exhibition here in Taipei.
Okay.
And so I actually got to go to that, and I saw some pretty cool things. I'm really interested in dinosaurs and fossils, and so I got to see some, there was a cool leg of a dodo bird sort of thing that I really enjoyed.
Ancient animals.
Yeah.
Or at least parts of them.
Yeah, exactly. So
Very cool.
I'm interested in that sort of thing. So anytime I can go to a history museum or a science museum, kind of doing stuff like that. But once in Kaohsiung, I was at the science museum and I saw a machine that made snow. And
A machine that made snow?
Inside. And so I learned about the process of changing air to snow, I guess. Yeah.
Did you put mango on top of the snow and then eat it?
No.
So it wasn't that kind of snow.
Too many children there with me.
Oh, darn. So there you go. All sorts of things you can see in a museum, from ancient animals to modern ways of making snow and pretty much everything in between. So check out your local museum. Head down for a normal visit or a special exhibition like the one Aaron went to. No matter what, you're sure to learn something and have a good time. All right, that's it for us.
Yeah.
I think we're going to head to the museum soon. So we'll see you next time, guys.
Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Oh, yeah.
An education in earthquakes. Danny visits the 921 Earthquake Museum of Taiwan. He is with the guide.
Let's start with the Cha Long Pu Fault Gallery.
Okay, what can we see here?
You will see some pictures of the 921 earthquake.
How big was the earthquake?
It measured 7.3 on the Richter scale.
Wow, look at these exhibitions of old classrooms. Everything is such a mess. Even the sports field was destroyed.
It was truly terrible. You could feel the power of nature. Follow me into the Earthquake Engineering Hall.
What can we learn in there?
We can learn how good engineering can save buildings in an earthquake. These days, engineers are better at building structures that can resist earthquakes.
Oh, cool! I can try my hand at building model structures.
Yes. See if you can build one that won't collapse. After that, we'll go into the disaster prevention hall. In there, we can find out what to do when there's an earthquake.
Danny starts to build a model.
Vocabulary Review.
Earthquake. Did you feel that earthquake? I thought I felt the ground shaking. Measure. This bridge measures 12.9 kilometers, and it's the longest one in Canada. Field. The football coach asked his players to meet him on the field behind the gym at 4 p.m. Engineer. Several engineers worked on this building project because it was so large. Structure. This brick house is the oldest structure in the town. It was built 500 years ago. Resist. These glass windows are very strong and can resist extremely strong winds.
智慧小补帖
Engineering. Collapse.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作。活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net